While we try to be as helpful as possible, this podcast should not be considered as professional or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out professional advice for your own personal circumstances before making any financial decisions.
Welcome back to our third episode of the Enthusiast Lab. I'm Julia.
And I'm Nick.
Oh, and this is the Enthusiast Lab. So coming back into, we just arrived here at the pod lab and some guys backed up into Nick's car. Nick
Fucking pissed me off.
Nick ran out to grab our drink and...
Yeah, because Julia couldn't make up her mind as usual. So
I needed my coffee.
Yeah, she needed a coffee. So I was, you know what, fuck it. We're still getting ready. I'll go out. And as I go out, to be honest, to the bloke that did hit me, kudos to you, man. You looked at it, you took a photo, you were actually approaching when I walked out, just by chance. I ended up seeing it. And he was really apologetic. I feel bad for the bloke. Funny as shit. Like, at the end of the day, I looked at it all. It was in a nice Lexus. And yeah, well, I've got the Ranger today. So yeah, he had a steel bar he had to go up against. And besides scraping a little bit of the paint, I'm like, it'll be all right. So I spoke with him. He's got some insurance. He's actually only got third party, ironically. Because the poor bloke's going out for a couple of years, is going, international, so he dropped his full cover down to that. So, poor guy. So I sat down, like, sucks to be you.
Yeah. He definitely took more damage than we did.
Fuck. The chances of that happening, literally, I just went to try and go and get my fucking coffee. Well, not even my coffee, your coffee, for fuck's sakes. So,
I got it.
Yeah. Look, it is what it is. We'll spit yarn with insurances and we'll get it all sorted. But, yeah. Fucking the chances of that, man.
All right, let's get to today's topic. I now have an iPad, so I'm not looking all the way over here for my screen if you guys are watching this on YouTube. And today we are covering the third part of our three-part segment of what do you need to do to get started.
Yep.
And today we're talking about designs. So all things designs, by designs we mean house designs. And we've covered the finances, so we know if we know what you could borrow and when you can borrow, unless if you're on a savings plan.
Yeah, so we've established the whole budget and the time frame for that.
And then we've talked about land and things that you need to consider, like size and location and all the other bits and bobs that we covered.
All the things.
So today we're doing designs. For the most part of this episode, it's really stuff that we need to consider as the consultant more than you would need to consider as the client 100%. Or the consumer.
Yeah.
But it is good for you guys to understand all the things that we need to think about.
And the process as well, how the whole process of elimination. So then, you start to pick up on why certain questions are being asked about your lifestyles and preferences, because there's so many different ways to be able to draw a 3x2 or a 4x2 home, etc. And it's not a one size fits all. There is no plan that's going to suit every single person's, recommendations wants and needs and preferences on how they want the house to be styled. So that's what today's going to be about. It's really going into fucking detail about everything that you could possibly have to think about. That's, again, not every consultant does this. A lot of them just go, here's a fucking standard plan, off you go, should be right. We like to take a lot more into consideration to make sure that this design and this package that you're going to have from us directly is going to be custom tailored to your lifestyle, to your preferences, your needs and wants, and your budget.
Yeah, and this is the kind of service that we deliver at Mr. Enthusiast 100%. And we pride ourselves on our service. So let's talk about, I'm looking at my dot points. The first thing we're talking about is price and how a price can vary very quickly based on a lot of factors.
Yeah. So the most common question I get is how much for a 3x2? How much for a 4x2? Fuck, how long's a piece of string? You can do a 3x2 fucking small. Like those little townhouses a lot of people see, even those real old established homes that are really short but then they have an enormous yard, those are the smaller style of homes. And yes, they will be cheaper because smaller square meterage. Normally they're a lot more square or rectangular, so it keeps the cost down compared to doing a enormous, one of our 6 or 8 car garage homes that has a 3x2. Now we're talking huge differences on the actual total size of the home. So these are the things you got to consider. Is there is no one size fits all. There are starting prices, but again, a lot needs to come into play to make sure that it is going to be suitable for your block and for your budget.
Yeah, definitely. And you also need to factor in price based on the budget. So you
100%.
kind of, if we're looking at land and house plus site works on the side, which we'll cover later on,
Yep.
You're going to make sure that you're not blowing your budget by spending a lot on the land and then having not enough left for the house. So that's something else you need to consider.
Yeah, and that's something that I do sometimes almost like a joke about is if you spend too much on the block of land, you might as well just go pitch up a tent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's because you end up spending too much and there's nothing left for a home, and you don't want to be stuck in that position because then you're almost forced into a position to try and find a real cheaper builder that would just slap something together. You're scraping all of the inclusions out of the home with certain builders to, again, try and fit the budget because you can only borrow so much. Or you're going to get to a point where you have to reconsider giving up that block, losing that deposit potentially, or pulling it up for sale depending on your situation, and then restarting the whole thing again. And that can be really frustrating for a lot of people.
Disheartening. If you fell in love with a block but you didn't factor everything in, that's really disheartening.
And it's hard because there's so much misinformation about how to do things and what to do. And some people just go, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And then they realize, shit, I might have shot myself.
Can't do it myself.
Fuck, can't do it. Almost shoot yourself in the foot sometimes. So that's why we try and always go back around, catching up, getting the right plan in place. So then you know exactly the steps you need to do to make sure that the idea and the goal that you want is going to be achievable and realistic.
Yeah. So the next thing that you would look for design-wise is your list of wants versus needs. And you guys got to remember there's a big difference between want and need in a home. You need a toilet, you need a kitchen, you need a bathroom, but you might want a bigger garage. You want high tiles or something like that.
Well, you might want a freestanding bath. You might want the big grand wardrobe that is, the size of a whole bedroom or theatre. So we all want everything. At the end of the day, champagne tastes a bit budget, right? We want everything for nothing. And I'll be the first person to sit there and go, it ain't fucking happening. Right?
I mean, I go onto realestate.com and look at $1 million prices knowing I can't afford that, but...
Fuck, we all do it. I'll do the same thing with race cars. I look at all the fucking Lambos and go, fuck yeah, this is going to be sick. But then my bank account says no.
I'm also very judgy as fuck on $1 million properties.
Yeah.
That colour, exactly, on that home, in that room.
Put your money where your mouth is, woman. So when it comes to when you actually want to look at building, what you got to really take into account is the fact that you need to narrow things down on a list, and it's really a lot easier when you start writing them down so that you actually are physically putting your mental notes onto paper. And then you start looking at and you start going, let's say I want a 4x2, I want a theatre, I want a bigger garage, I want a music room or a studio room, whatever those things are. And then there is I need. Need are the ones that it's no negotiation. Yeah. It's must have, like, if I don't do this, fuck it, I'm not doing it.
If I don't get this in the house, I may as well just buy an established.
Yeah, it's one of those ultimate where you go, I'm either getting that 3x2 or a 4x2 home, and it has to have this. Otherwise, I'm just, fuck it.
Buy established.
I'll go established, or you know what? I'm just going to keep renting or live at parents' place, whatever the situation is. So those are the things that you want to try and list them out, and then we can start going, all right, cool. Let's bring all of these in. Let's make sure we hit all your needs first, and then look at all the wants and go, what can we try and fit within the budget? What can we try and do? There might be some compromise, but what our goal is to try and narrow that down so that you're going to be 100% happy with this design and this home and this package based on your circumstances and your plan. You might be in this home only for a couple of years, or you might be in this for the next 5-10 years onwards and growing into the home. So you might spend a little bit more to get a lot more of those wants and needs.
Yep, that's it. And then we were saying to look at the rental house that you're in now for inspo.
100%.
If you're ever stuck for ideas.
Or where to start, like, when I look at floor plans, obviously now after 7 years it's a bit different, but when I first looked and when I was still a mechanic and shit, it was just a piece of paper with lines on it. Like, I could not fucking envision half this shit. So for me to say what I ideally want as a first-home buyer was so difficult. I was just like, fuck, I just need a garage. Whereas now, let's say in your circumstances, you might be living at your parents' place, or you might be renting, or you've gone to a few rentals or your mate's place, and there might be a couple of things that you go, fuck, I really want this in my home. Note them down. Those are the things you can start orientating the house plan, because the whole point of building is you get to build what you want to a certain degree. I have to put that in there because otherwise I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I'll do everything.
Yeah.
Look, so that's the whole point of building. It's either build what you want. If not, go buy fucking established. That is how simple this shit is. And people overcomplicate things. But again, champagne taste, be a budget. You want to be realistic. So note them all down and then none them all out on your list. What's needs and what are wants.
And things to note down here are things like bedrooms. Do you want the master? Some people are very picky with where they want their master to be. So do you want a master in the front, in the middle, or the back? For example, I hate a master in the front or the back. I am very finicky about having our master in the middle of the home.
Yeah, you were.
And
I don't give a shit. I just need a bigger garage.
Well, yeah, I know, but you live in your garage, so.
Fuck both.
How many bathrooms do you guys need? So we're happy with a 3x2, but some people want a 3x3 and each bedroom to have its own bathroom. That's important to note down.
Yeah.
If you want a theatre or a study, is that important to you?
Yeah.
Is that a must-have, or is that just we really love to have movie nights?
You might be big on entertaining, or you might be real big in gaming and going, look, I still want to be able to keep the bedrooms in case a friend wants to come over or we're planning on having kids in the future. But also I want a room dedicated towards I like to stream or game or do something, and you might want that away from the home. So all these things, you start noting them down because it becomes part of your lifestyle and part of your passions and hobbies. And the one thing that we've been pushing so much with Mr. Enthuse is don't be ashamed of that. Use that as your driving force, as the whole reason as to, fuck this. I'm going to build. This is what I'm going to do.
Exactly. And if you start off by writing these small downs, just in your sticky notes on your computer or your notes in your smartphone, just to start writing down the things that you want. And if you bring that to your first or your second appointment with us or whoever, it helps us so much more because we can narrow down plans based on those like non-negotiables. My non-negotiable is master must be in the middle. I will not build a home with a master in the front or the back.
You also wanted a bigger shower and double basin. So
and I wanted a bigger kitchen. I'm big on kitchen. On cooking.
On bigger kitchen. But you also, when I remember, because we were doing changes on our floor plan, was the whole point of we had the kitchen a bit offset, and you said, no, I wanted it more towards the rear, so that because we like to entertain a lot, we host a lot of parties, and you don't want the kitchen on the other side of the fucking living area.
I mean, you also got to remember
dragging all your food across the whole fucking place.
We didn't really have many plans to choose from. We'll get back into this at a later podcast.
That's a fucking story.
But we didn't really have more than 4 floor plans to choose from.
Yeah.
And the reason we picked our floor plan was
because of me.
It was called the D.
The D. But we'll go into more detail about that because that was funny as fuck.
Okay, so another thing to consider with your floor plan, and this is, again, stuff that Nick needs to consider a lot when he's meeting up with you, is the frontage of the home. So what do you want to explain? What's the frontage of the home?
So we'll go over the frontage of the block. So basically, when you're looking at designs, they are normally designed to suit with the different setbacks required for specific size blocks. So a lot of the times, a lot of these developers that we've gone over in these estates and even in private blocks, they're normally cut out in certain sizes. So the width is the frontage is based on the width of the block.
Yeah.
So how wide it is, and normally we consider it from the front. There's no point looking at the back because you're not building at the back of the block. You're building on the front after the setbacks. So what you look for is how wide that block is. If that's 6 meters, then you got to look at designs suited for 6 meters and vice versa. So it's the average designs, how they start from the small to the big is normally you go 6 meters, 7.5 meters wide, 10, 10 and a half, 12 and a half, 15 meters wide, 17 meters wide. And then after that, you get into the real big ones, which is more of that the acre style, those
Farmhouse,
farmhouse. Yeah, those farmhouse like on like big acre blocks and shit like that. Those are those hella wide homes, but they're quite short in depth.
They're normally like living room and all bedrooms are like spread out like that.
Yeah, they're normally like spread out horizontally rather than being a more of a vertical or square style. So those are the things that look at. So like for example, on our website, all of our plans, you will see like a little dimension on it, even on the like big garage plans, and you'll have 15M, 12M, 18M. So what that is that design is made for an 18 meter wide block.
Yep.
And that's what you got to look at.
And a small little thing to note here is if you have picked a smaller block, you can't go and pick a 15 meter wide home to fit on a 10 meter wide block.
Nah, fuck no. It's just not going to work. The way designs are made is so that it's suited based on the availability of site coverage and the setbacks and everything. So you can't just go, oh, you know what, I'm going to grab a bigger block, a bigger design, and I'll just shrink it. No, it doesn't work that way. The other way is fine. You can go for something smaller and make it bigger, and you just pay the difference of the extensions and making it bigger. But doing it the opposite way is going to, again, nothing's impossible, but how deep are your pockets?
Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to. So try and keep it as simple as possible. There are people out there going, no, don't worry about it. We'll just do a straight, fully custom from from a blank piece of paper. Bro, fucking good luck to you.
Hats off to you, but you'll be paying
fucking arm and a leg and your soul.
Part of your soul, not your whole soul.
99.9% of it.
And aside from the frontage of the block, we also need to consider the depth of the block.
100%.
So the depth of the block comes in 3 sizes or
3
4?
main sizes. So again, this comes into, you'll start noticing these things when you look at stage plans. So normally a lot of developers, depending on what they're able to cut and demographically, there's a lot that comes into play. But the depth of blocks that you normally on an average deal with is 20 meters wide, 20 meters deep, 25 meters deep and 30 meters deep. You always get those odd ones where they'll be slightly offset and shit. But if you always work on those main 3 for the depth and the different widths, then you're on a good you're on a good roll. You can tell when you start looking at those shorter depth because the designs are actually a lot more square.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you start getting to really longer rectangular ones, that's when you're getting into that 25 to 30 meter designed like blocks.
Yep.
Because you can stretch it out. So you might not go as wide, but you can stretch it lengthwise instead. So that's what I tend to do.
And I don't even have it in the notes, but I thought of something. There are sometimes the odd blocks. So it says a 10 meter frontage, but it widens out in like a triangular
like the
shape.
triangle fucking ones, yeah. Yeah, so look, some of them can work quite good. Some of them are an absolute fucking pain to work with because you lose a lot of wasted space. And this is the thing is a lot of people try and chase size of blocks and, I want 600 squares. And then you go to a lot of these developments and they go, you've got a 20 meter wide block and it's 620. But then when you look at what you can physically use, because it starts wide and angles into a tiny ass little fucking thing at the top, you can't even use half of the fucking block. So you're only left with like 300 to 400 squares of actual usable space. So much of that is wasted dead space. So a lot of things you do need to consider when it comes to this.
Yeah, and normally you don't have a good plan that fits to them. So you're either losing a lot of your backyard space because you need a long design, or you lose out on all your front yard space.
Or you're just chopping and changing, and you're not going to be able to find something all the time that's quite relatable, like something in construction for you to use as a comparison to see something in person. So there's a lot of things to consider, but at the end of the day, some people want that and some people don't. So just work with what your circumstances are, what blocks are available in the areas that you're looking, and then you can always make a more informed decision from there.
Yep, that's it. So the next part of designs I wanted to talk about is custom designs versus cookie cutter designs versus altered standard plans.
Okay, so your cookie cutter designs is your generic 3x2, 4x2 homes that might have a study, might have a theatre, and you can normally notice it's very uniform style plans across all the builders. They all have something where it's a theatre on the front, then it's a master, then a couple of bedrooms at the back, and a kitchen on the offside. So your cookie cutters are just like your hella basic entry level, not much, custom thought has been put into place. It's just, here it is. This is the cheapest price point. Take it or leave it. Then you've got your alterations, which are a bit more, still they're based off a cookie cutter design. So they're still orientated to be a bit more better on budget. And then it's basically, they put a lot more thought into adding certain areas and like lifestyle change, like sculleries and bigger en-suites and stuff. So those are those altered versions where you actually start to modify the floor plan yourself.
Yep.
And normally, again, this changes with every builder. With the builders we use, what happens is if you decide to change the floor plans that we have our own or from our builder partners, you only pay for the changes that you add the extra materials. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a theatre, and in that theatre it's open at the moment, but you want to close it off with double doors and some brickwork. So what we'll do is we're not going to charge you for that change. We're going to charge you for the extra materials, so the extra brickwork and the extra doors, because that wasn't there before. So whatever's not on the plan and you've added, you pay for it, which is fair.
Yep.
But vice versa, let's say that original theatre already had doors, but you want to get rid of them to keep it open, you get that money back.
It's credited back to you.
Exactly. You get that credit back to you. So if you take shit away, you get some money back. If you add shit, you have to pay for it. Pretty fair. Whereas some builders, to avoid people from doing changes, they start smashing with fees on top, variation fees, non-stop, left, right and center. And then all of a sudden you sit there and go, what the fuck? Okay, I just want to do changes. It's almost like a bit of a fear mongering.
Well, yes and no. I want to say you do get variation fees, but that's when you've done structural changes to the home after contracts.
On average, yes. But there are builders that up front, to make people to stop doing changes, especially during the boom windows, that a lot is, this is your plan, that's it. You want to do changes, boom, we're going to smash it with fees straight off the bat before you even add anything else onto it to try and deter people from doing it. Remember, you're paying for this, not the builder.
Yep.
So if you want to do your changes, go do your fucking changes, as long as you're able to actually afford them.
That's it. And
custom. Okay, so there's a few different ways of understanding the term custom when it comes to residential building and designing. Now, when I think of custom as a person, I think of you start from a blank slate, so a blank piece of paper, and you fully customize a home. And now a lot of people might think of it as well going, look, I like 3 different designs. I want to chop and change a couple of them and put them together. That is a fully custom design. Now, what you guys need to understand, and this is something that there's so much mixed information about this. There is not a single fucking builder in Australia alone that will not charge you a higher rate to do a custom plan. And by custom, I'm talking you provide me a plan, for example, to this builder and go, I want you to draw this up, or I want a floor plan that you don't even have that exists and completely change it to what I want. They will charge you more. And there's a reason for that. The main reason for that is because it hasn't been built before. So what happens is the builder's going to put a little bit of extra margin into that home to basically cover their asses, because they don't know exactly what's needed for the quants, for the materials, because it hasn't been built. Once it's been built, maybe for the next few other people that choose that same plan, it might be a bit cheaper, but you're always going to pay a little bit more. There are many consultants that go, we provide a fully custom plan for free. Fuck off, man. You're just paying for it. There is nothing free in this world.
No, right? Of course not.
Especially when it comes to building, when you're spending fucking hundreds of thousands of dollars, you are going to pay for it. One way or another, it's just how it's presented to you. If they're transparent to give you the fees up front to let you know why, or if they don't. But always make sure these custom ones, it's never like that. A lot of our plans that we do, yes, they are customized with bigger garages and specific things, but what we do is we do those alterations. So we grab a standard design. So we really know it's as lean as possible in terms of the costing on that home. Then we do those additional charges to try and keep the pricing of that as efficient and as sharp as possible without having to go full to the other side.
And it's also better when someone comes to you with an idea, and we've talked about this between the two of us. You've said to me, clients come to me and they've talked about wanting to design a custom home. And you've said a lot of times the best method that we use is we find a design as close to their idea as possible. and then make the alterations, because it
100%.
becomes a lot cheaper that way than starting off from scratch.
Yeah, and it's like what I mentioned before, where there's only so many ways you can actually design a 3 or a 4x2 home.
Yep.
So we start with the bare basics, find something that we can use as the bare bones, and then do the small alterations that as possible. The less changes you do, obviously the cheaper it is, because you're not adding more materials, you're not adding more shit in. So you try and get it as close as possible. And at the same time as all of this is happening, we're still trying to make sure that we're using base plans that might have a little bit that might be a bit cheaper, so that we've got the room in the budget to do these changes that people are really wanting, to make sure that we're not designing a fully, sick house, but it's like 50 grand over budget and you got to go back to the drawing board. What that is, in my eyes, is I'm wasting my time and I'm also wasting the client's time.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
no one's going to if you can't afford it, why fucking waste your time on this shit? Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, so then the next part I wanted to talk about is zoning. Stuff like site coverage, developer requirements, setbacks, and easements. These are the things that we also need to consider when choosing a design for you, because if you pick a specific design and it goes into a specific estate, due to the setbacks, it might not work.
Yep.
So let's talk about the site coverage first.
Cool. So there are many different zonings which comes into consideration when we're looking at your land, and this is something we have to consider with the homes as well. So sometimes you might only be able to build on 50 or 60% of the site, of the total area. So again, this is where you can't grab something that is so big and try and shrink it, because it might, even though you might get it into budget and you get somewhat what you like, the council might not approve it because it's too big for the size of the area, because you need to have certain amount of outdoor living area and all these other things.
Yeah, so basically what the council is saying is they want you to have a front yard and a backyard of some sort.
Yeah, of some sort, which is fucking ironic, to be honest, where you purchase a block of land and then they tell you how the house has to sit and how it has to be built. Look, at the end of the day, fucking, it is what it is, and we just have to work around it. Mm-hmm. But it's fucking bullshit sometimes, because you want to go and build something a bit bigger because the blocks are so fucking small, and then they sit there and go, no, you can't do that. Fuck you, man. Fuck.
And this is something, this site coverage is something that's normally, if there is a site coverage amount, that's normally written in the design guidelines or the restrictive covenants?
Not really. So it depends. Sometimes it's just based on the zone, which we get the information from the council. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's on what's called a local development plan.
That's the one I was thinking of.
There are many different ways. So as long as the consultant and the land agent work together, they normally are able to find all the relevant information we need. So then we can make sure that we're getting all of this information ahead of time. So then again, you're not wasting your time. You fall in love with a plan, you find the right budget for it, but then it can't actually fit on that size home or a size block. So there are a lot of things, because it's not just the size of what you can build on it, it's how far away from the front you need to be. So your setbacks, your back setbacks, the side of the fencing setbacks. Sometimes on established blocks in some areas, you might have what's called easements. And easements are things like there might be a sewer line running at the back of the property, or a water main or something like that, where you can't actually physically build all the way to the boundary. So then you have to shrink the design to make it work. There is a lot that comes into play. It's not a plug and play going, oh, I like this and I like that. Let's merge them together and here you go.
I like this design. This is what I want. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
No, but as long as people are getting the right information up front, and the more that, if you guys can get anything out of this, that you can start being more aware of these things, then it's actually working, because you start realizing that there is more to it rather than just being should be fucking right. I'll just make it work. If you don't make it work, I'll take it elsewhere. Doesn't work that way.
So the next part I wanted to talk about is, whilst there is a price to the home, there's also a price to the site works. Yes. So let's talk about what site works are and the things that we need to factor in.
Look, so just as a quick rough, the site works is the works that are required to develop in terms of where your block of land is. It's the works that are required for us to be able to basically build on. Mm-hmm. So it's things like your earthworks. Is there any retaining that's required? Is the block flat level? If not, do we need to cut and retain?
Hard digging.
Yeah, like hard digging based on the results. So if you're in areas where it's more coastal, where there might be some limestone, or near where there's a lot more clay, you're going to have a lot more digging or rock breaking required. You need to take in consideration your soak wells. So a lot of the times people will try and save money by doing it themselves. Now a lot of the times the council actually requires the builder to do that. So it has to be done to a certain requirement with engineering details. So you can't just get away with the little small plastic ones from Bunnings. They're usually big fuck off concrete soak wells, and they're normally craned on each side of the home. Normally one on the front, one on the back, depending on what's available. You've got things like all your council permits, application fees, planning fees if needed, and even things as simple as your paving. So you've got your driveway paving, but then from the edge of your driveway to the end of the block, that's actual council land. That's called your crossover. And you'll actually be surprised how often that gets missed by builders to try and keep the cost down, and it becomes the client, it becomes their responsibility. We got fucking caught out with that.
We got shafted.
And we thought that was, normal, but it's not. Some builders actually offer to have that all completed. So these is all those little bits and bobs that are included in your site works.
Also, you also have to consider the type of soil that you're going to be building on. So a sandy site versus a clay site, very different costs.
Fucking hell, huge. And a lot of that is actually coming into the footings and what's required for the slab, how thick that slab needs to be according to the engineering details. So then they'll need to go, all right, cool, we need to dig fucking 1/2 meter trenches with big ass Rio bars, which is what a lot of guys in Adelaide are going to have experience.
Yep.
And a lot of people in WA where it's more towards clay areas, more towards the hills where there's more clay, you'll notice that your site works are a lot more expensive compared to people more on the coastal where it's just softer sand. It's a lot easier, just compact it, smaller slabs, happy days, and it becomes cheaper. So it's not a one size fits all. So it's based on the results you get from your surveys to know if the site is level, make sure everything's sweet, and also your engineering details. So when the engineer goes and drills out some holes on your block, gets those soil samples, and then we get a result for what footing and slab that we need, and if there's any other affected areas like bushfire ratings and all sorts of things. Yep. So BAL is bushfire attack level. All those things come into your site works.
Yeah, and that's stuff that is on top of the price of your land and the price of your home. So that's another thing to factor in, which I think a lot of people don't realise. A lot of people just assume it's house and land because that's what's advertised everywhere, house and land packages. But really it's house, land and site works. So that's something else to really consider or just be aware of that you need to factor into your budget.
Yeah, 100%.
And the last thing I wanted to talk about.
Well, just before we jump over, with the site works, that comes in two parts. So some builders offer your site works fees as provisional.
Yes.
And one of them actually offers them as being fixed, which we can go into more details, but when you do sometimes see a provisional allowance or fixed, do note that there are a lot of things to consider when you're looking at it.
Yes, we will get into that in a later episode.
Okay.
So keep your ears out for that one, where that one's coming up sometime soon. I actually have two topics. So one is solar orientation. We also have to consider solar orientation.
100%. 100%. We'll go over quickly. So basically, the way solar orientation works is, where the north point is on your block. You want to make sure that the western side is away from, your bedrooms and more focused towards obviously your living areas, etc. Because this will all help with your energy efficiency for the home. And every home in WA needs to be 6-star energy rated in order to be able to obtain their building permit. So there's no single home currently at the moment that isn't 6-star energy efficient for their homes. Otherwise, the council will not approve the building permit. So a big factor into that is how the layout is. If the garage is on the left, and that means sometimes that the living area is on the right. Again, all of this comes into effect with the solar orientation. Sometimes you might need to flip the whole entire design to help accommodate for that.
Yep. And the last topic I've got here is our enthusiast range. So it's something that we do. It's something that's how our name came about. We're enthusiastic about what you guys are passionate about. And our enthusiast range is our line of designs that we've curated and created from previous clients. Someone's come up to us and they said, hey, I want this. And we're like, fuck, haven't thought about that, but we'll design something.
Game on. We'll make something work.
And those kind of rooms include a garage, or like obviously we're garage focused. So anywhere from 1-car garage all the way up to 30-car garage
30
now.
car, which is what the one we're working on at the moment. That is going to be
wild.
Fucking wild.
Wild. But we also got gaming rooms. We have hair salons based around hairdressers, at-home hairdressers.
We did do a sex room.
That was interesting because that was like a hidden door.
I didn't post it. Obviously, we didn't want to go down that path. That was fucking wild. We basically, just quick because people are going to be like, fucking what? So it was a entire room, like bigger than a theatre. Like we're talking nearly 2 times the size of a theatre. And it was tucked in from the ensuite. There was a hidden door that you opened through that had a separate lock on it. And outside, there was only one highlight window from outside. So it almost looked like a normal bedroom, which had its own separate roller blinds and like it was going to get blacked out. That was it.
Yep.
It was basically a red room.
Think your 50 Shades of Grey red room kind of hardcore.
Yeah, we were doing reinforced steel beams in there for sex swings and shit. And that's because the client
did swinger parties, I believe.
Yeah. He was a swinger, so obviously wanting to keep all that into a separate thing. And man, no qualms.
No.
I sat there, I was like, fucking, we're on.
Yep.
We're doing it. And we both agree. We said, I'm not going to advertise it.
No, we won't mention the client. We won't advertise it.
No, some people want to keep that stuff private, which is not a problem. But I did tell him if we ever fucking share, if someone asks about it, we will present it.
We have done it.
And he was fine with it.
Yeah.
So,
we've done stuff like stripper poles.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
We base homes around chefs who like a big kitchen and really want a lot of amenities and appliances.
They want to go to town, like a massive butler's pantry, scullery, like walk-in freezers, the whole shebang. We had someone that wanted to shower, like a beer fridge in the shower. Oh, mate, we get it all. Like whatever someone has a passion or they have something about, that's what we're all about, and that's what we like to focus on. It's about you. If these are the things that you really want, then we'll do everything in our fucking power to make sure that we are able to deliver on that.
Yep. That's what we are enthusiastic about. That's 100%. Why we are Mr. Enthusiast.
That's the whole enthusiast. It's not just Nick and his garages or Nick and some hairdresser salons. It's enthusiast about everything. It's the broad spectrum of whatever you are enthusiastic or passionate about. If you have any hobbies, if you're really big on gaming, if you're into streaming, we've had OnlyFans couples. We've had them all, man. And it's okay. Just let us know so that we can make sure that if you're going to build what you want. And that is one of the biggest things that I like to really reinforce and support people about. It's if you're going to build what you want to a certain degree. If not, go buy established.
Yep.
It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate shit. Just if you're going to pay a little bit more for it, get it.
Yeah.
Get what you want.
I didn't actually type up our recap, but just a recap. So when you're thinking about your design and what you're looking at designing,
there is a lot to think about.
Think about the price and how much you have in your budget. Number 2, list out your wants and your needs. If you come prepared with a list of your must-haves or your non-negotiables, it makes Nick's life so much easier.
Please make my life easier.
Go to display homes or go to rental homes or look at friends' homes, families' homes for inspiration. If you're really stuck on ideas, have a look around. Go
on websites. Go on some builders' websites. See if you see something that really screams out at you or something that, seems quite interesting that, I wouldn't mind having this in it. Start noting them down. There might not be a need, but it might be a want.
Yes.
And you can start working it through.
If you're absolutely walking blind, that's okay. That's what we're here for. This 100%. Is what we do day in, day out. We live, breathe and eat this bloody company.
Fucking oath.
This is what we do. Something else you need to consider about is the frontage of your block and the depth of your block.
So that's how wide it is and how deep those blocks are.
Yes. Consider whether you're looking at a cookie cutter or a standard base plan, a base plan with alterations, or a custom plan, and think about the prices that are associated with those. Something to note is the zoning, but really that's what we
that's more than what the consultant does. But if there is info that you know about and stuff like that, then obviously the more information you can give, the easier it becomes my life as a consultant and for designing it all, and also for whoever you end up going with, if it's not us, because the more info, the better it is to start narrowing things down sooner for you rather than trying to chase all this information and sometimes it not being available.
Yep. Remember that you need to factor in the solar orientation of the home. And lastly, you need to leave a little bit of budget available for site works. So those are all the things that you need to keep in mind when you are thinking about your design. So let's plug. Where can we find Mr. Enthusiast?
Sweet.
Facebook?
So we've got Facebook, Mr. Enthusiast. You got Instagram. You've got TikTok, YouTube, our website, which is www.mrenthusiast.net.au. We're on Google. Yep.
And wherever you got your podcast.
Yes. So
the Enthusiast Lab.
Fucking keen. We're all over the place. And anyway, if there's any questions, some burning questions that might be keeping you up at night or anything like that, just send them through and we'll fucking answer them on here.
That's it. Send them through to Nick at mrenthusiast.net.au. And remember, guys,
we're not here
to fuck spiders.